If you are a Christian or simply someone who is wise and fears God, don't participate in any movement or any policy or any motion or any desire or any resolution by the nations or your country or any other group that seeks, number one, to divide the nation of Israel and to create another nation that hates them. Number two, don't participate in any movement that actively seeks for the end of the Jewish nation, the state of Israel. Because if you do and you participate in such a movement, what God spoke to Abraham, saying that I will bless the nations and I will bless whosoever shall bless you, and I will curse whosoever shall curse you, will come to pass in your life. You see, there are two ways that nations get blessed. Number one, when they side with the nation of Israel and they stand for righteousness and for what is good. And nations get cursed and get into trouble the moment they side with other nations that are anti-Christ, anti-Israel. The moment that happens, or when nations begin to pass laws concerning things that God considers to be abominations. So imagine mandating, say, the LGBTQ movement and whatever, that kind of stuff, homosexuality, things that God hates and detests. When a nation begins to enshrine such things in its laws, in the laws that govern the land, that nation attracts a curse, and that nation attracts judgment from God. So now, I was just a while ago just listening, and then I read an article from Al Jazeera, and we're talking about the United Nations, how the nations voted, to pass certain laws against Israel, and how the ICC, the International Criminal Court, all of a sudden decided they should issue arrest warrants for Gallant and the Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, for their arrests. All right? They are trying to go after individuals that chose to protect their people, that chose to put their nation first. Because the question I usually put to people who are opposed to what Israel is doing, or the way it fought in Gaza, I usually put to them the question that, what should Israel have done? Should they have just sat down and allowed their enemies to come over and massacre them? Or should they have said, okay, we forgive you for killing 1,200 of our people and taking 251 as hostages into terror tunnels, including breastfeeding babies? Should they just have sat down and said nothing? Which any nation would accept such terms and to play by such a book? You see? So, by way of moral clarity, you begin to see that it doesn't make sense at all. But yet the hate for the nation of Israel is palpable. It is felt. It is virulent. Now, here is my message, as I began off saying that do not side with those people. When you read the book of Psalms, chapter 2, the psalmist begins off by asking the question that why do the nations rage and the people imagine a vain thing against the Lord and his anointed? That entire chapter is Jesus speaking. Psalms chapter 2, it is Jesus. He says that for the Lord has placed his king on his holy mountain, Zion. He's talking about Jesus. Jesus is the true king of the nation of Israel. So you as a Christian who's opposed to the nation of Israel, who's opposed to the nation of Israel, you are opposed to what Jesus is king over. So you need to get to your senses. Now let me get you another verse to put everything in a perspective. Consider the book of Revelation. And the book of Revelation begins to tell us, in fact it tells us in clear terms, why the nations are behaving the way they are behaving towards the nation of Israel. The book of Revelation chapter 12, it says that there was a great sign, and there was a red dragon, and there was a woman who was travailing with a child, and that child was meant to rule the nations. And the dragon stood before the woman to devour her child, but the child was caught up to God. And then the dragon was so pissed off, because it is exactly what they did when they tried to kill Jesus in the days of Herod. So what they did, but somehow Jesus was saved, right? And so what happens is that the dragon then spews out waters. The prophetic language for waters in there are nations, the different armies, the different groups, the entire Middle East, the entire Islamic world, the entire Arab world is against this small state. But what is fascinating is they never get to stop and ask themselves the question that we have always fought against these guys. Sometimes 5 against 1, larger numbers, better equipped. But each time and every time that we have gone up against this small nation, we have always lost. They have always lost. They can't begin to ask themselves that perhaps maybe their God is fighting for them. But the problem here is that there is another God who is competing. There is the God of the Muslim, the God of the Arab, that is Allah. He has promised them that it's not allowed for the nation of Israel to form a state. And yet, all the prophets from Isaiah, Jeremiah, Zechariah, Ezekiel, all of them, they said that as long as the earth is, and that if anyone could discover the foundations of the earth, and upon which the earth is built, then the nation of Israel shall cease from being a nation before God. All right? And the prophets speak of a time that these guys would come back. Hosea specifically mentions that and says that after 2 days, we shall go on to live in his presence. And that was after they had rejected Jesus. So 2,000 years later, the Jews begin to go back to their ancestral land. And then there is a group that says, no, you do not belong here. That this land is Palestine. Palestine, which has never been an entity, it has never existed. It was a creation by Yasser Arafat in the 60s, aided by KGB propaganda. So they came up with the Palestinian identity. There was never a kingdom or a nation called Palestine. In fact, it was a renaming, a spiteful renaming of Judea, from Judea to Palestine by the Emperor Hadrian, the Roman Emperor. That is around in 130 AD. But people don't care all about these facts. They don't care about them. What drives them is a deep-rooted hatred for the nation of Israel. A deep-rooted hatred. You see, this reminds me of the words of Jesus Christ himself. When some of the Jews wanted to kill him, he told them that when they said that their father was Abraham, he said that if Abraham was your father, the works of your father Abraham, you would do. But because he's not your father, and you are of your father the devil, therefore the lusts of your father you seek to do. So they wanted to kill Jesus. So any nation, any group, any movement, any religion whose stated goal is to destroy the nation of Israel, whose stated goal is death to Israel, is under the service of Lucifer. They are simply acting out the motions, the lusts, the desires of their father Lucifer. So you as a Christian, next time you are tempted to participate in this lunacy and madness, remember that the people who are anti-Israel are anti-Christ. The people who seek to destroy that nation are anti-Christ, and they are doing and carrying out the lusts and the desires of the devil. So win yourself of that madness and go and repent and ask God to give you a clear understanding of why the nation of Israel is not going anywhere. It is not going anywhere. They will come up against them. In fact, in the later days, it will be 200 million soldiers that will rise up against the nation of Israel. But even then, they will die. And only 66 million of them will survive to go back to their different nations to tell a tale. And in that day, it will be Russia and the like, and that entire group. So be warned, do not participate.